Hello. Great start. As a runner who lives in a place that's super cold in the winter, I tend to rely on the treadmill quite a bit in my winter training. So something that I'm asked a lot is, how do you manage your treadmill runs and understand your paces? So I just wanted to break down with 4 different parts what I think is most important about knowing a treadmill machine and how to utilize it to the best of your ability while training for, in my case, a marathon, but virtually any kind of running. Now, I am from the States, so I am going to be using miles per hour for speed and paces per mile. So I'm sorry if you're from anywhere else in the world, but it still can be applicable to your use as well. You need to know what your mile per hour pace is versus what your mile pace is. So just understanding the basic paces you normally run. Like for me, I know that 7.5 miles per hour is going to be 8-minute mile pace. And I know that 8 miles an hour is going to be 7-minute 30 pace. Now, I'm not expecting that you would know all these different things, but you learn them over time. And one of the most important things you can look at is a treadmill pace sheet. We have one linked down in the description, first link in the description, so you can go check that out. A specific place I typically go to find out what the mile per hour pace is versus what your mile pace is. The correlation between the two. Something notable with the conversion of miles per hour to your mile pace is the incline that you put on the treadmill. So this pace chart that we link below indicates the correct pacing per mile based on the speed with a 1% incline. A lot of people recommend that you do 1% incline on the treadmill to account for the resistance you would normally feel outside with wind resistance when typically running outside, or some up and down in elevation. Because if you're on a treadmill and you have no incline, you have 0 wind resistance, and your pacing isn't technically the same kind of difficulty as if you were outside. So my general rule of thumb is any kind of running I do on a treadmill needs to be a baseline of 1%, unless I'm intentionally running super flat or downhill segments, which I am from time to time right now in this training block because I'm training for the Boston Marathon and want to get my legs used to some downhill at times. But 90 to 95% of the time, I'm putting it at least 1% on my incline. Number 2, chapter 2, if you will. Technology is evolving every month, it seems, these days in the running world. So most watches, like the Coros Pace 3 I have an indoor option. So if you want to run on the treadmill, it's going to be most beneficial to do that indoor running option or a treadmill option, whatever watch you have. If it has that, use it. Don't do the outdoor run because it's going to give you a better representation of the distance you're running because it knows you're indoor and staying in the same place. Does that mean it's going to be accurate? No. From what I've observed and what I've heard from anecdotally from everybody nowadays, it's no matter what, you're still not going to get a perfectly accurate reading on your watch. Something else that could help with that, but still not be perfect, is something like what I have as well with Coros with the Pod 2. Any kind of foot pod combination with a watch is going to give you at least a little bit more accurate reading on your distance. You can't be so worried about the distance that your watch says you're running as long as you trust what the treadmill says. But those are 2 steps to get you at least close to it. And in my specific circumstance, whenever I do an indoor run with the Pace 3, it asks me to calibrate the distance at the end of the run. So if I ran 9.3 miles according to the watch, but actually ran 10 miles on the treadmill, I can tell the watch that I ran 10 miles and it will recalibrate the entire run and give me accurate splits. 3, you could have fancy gadgets, you could have a watch and a foot pod and all that stuff, but at the end of the day, all you need is the data you see on the treadmill. The treadmill is going to give you the most accurate readout on how fast you're running and how far you're running. Because the belt literally measures how far you are going, you can reliably trust on how far you have gone on this thing. So at the end of the day, even if your data gets all messed up, people get all bent out of shape about it not being accurate. You did the workout, you know what you did. As long as you did the distance and you did the paces you got the work in. And if Strava says otherwise, it's gonna be okay. So trust the treadmill. If that means you need to just get rid of your watch and manually enter your workout into Strava, just do that. As long as you're getting your training in, the training that you need to do, that's the most important thing. Chapter 4, final point, 4, my philosophy on using treadmills. I think if it's I don't run or I run on the treadmill, I think running on the treadmill is the better option. If the outside weather, as opposed to inside weather, the weather outside isn't ideal for running and you need to go to a treadmill to get a workout in, I personally feel like that's better than nothing. And some people feel like there's an allergy to the treadmill and they'll skip the day. But that could set you back in your training. So being consistent and not letting that unravel can be really important. So knowing a treadmill is what can really help with that. I think a lot of people feel intimidated by it, especially if it's a workout day, like if you're doing intervals or something crazy and you need to know the paces, then it's super important that you understand the machine well. You know, if you're fatigued and you need to know what pace you're going, how many miles per hour you're going for how long, you should know it like the back of your hand, in my opinion. Now, if you're doing easy runs on this thing and, you know, you're just locked into the same pace for, 8 to 10 miles, it's not that complicated. But if you have the knowledge base, it's a lot easier to say yes to it when it's not ideal to run outside. And the reality about using the treadmill and understanding pacing when it comes to miles per hour and your mile paces, it just makes you a better runner. It makes you more knowledgeable in the data of running. And this might be sort of controversial, like if people don't really care that much and they just run on feel and want running to be fun, that's totally cool too. But if you're going after goals, and especially in marathon running, if you're super fatigued in the later part of the race and you need to know what your splits are to try to get your goal, try to get to that time, you want to be able to understand the math of what you're doing split-wise and pace-wise to make sure that you're hitting that goal in the later stages when you're fatigued, when your brain doesn't want to work as hard because your body's falling apart. Okay, so to review, know your paces, miles per hour versus mile pace. Incline always being at 1% as a baseline. Set your watch to the indoor or treadmill setting and wear a foot pod if that helps. Trust the treadmill for distance and speed over any kind of device that you may wear. And at the end of the day, just get the work in and have fun. Seems counterintuitive with all the a video about data on a treadmill. For me, it's fun to nerd out about it sometimes. So hopefully this is helpful. If you have any other insight into treadmill running, please leave your insight down below. Or if you have a different philosophy than I talked about in point 4, please share it down below as well. I would love to chat with you down there. Hope that answers all the questions. I'm just gonna send this video to people who DM me questions about the treadmill now. Okay, bye.